Our governor tells us there's not another dime available in the state budget for roads. There's a few dimes being spent on other things. From the Independence Institute, works on energy policy, Michael Sandoval, thank you for being here.
John.
And a man who knows a few things about electric cars, Damon Sasso, from the Independence Institute. Glad you dressed up. Thank you.
I don't get paid enough to actually buy a suit. But.
All right, let's start over here. There's an incentive in Colorado for people to buy electric vehicles. Tell me about that.
It's a $5,000 tax credit that's available to anybody who wants to buy a passenger vehicle, so an electric vehicle. It's also available to folks, companies who do trucking, carry stuff with their trucks. So there's
what's a tax credit?
And the tax credit is between $7,000 and $20,000.
So $20,000.
Yes.
All right, and it's really important that people understand tax credit is way different than a deduction. You give money to a charity, you get to write it off on your taxes as a deduction. A credit is a check directly to you. In other words, you owe $5,000 in taxes, but you buy a Tesla, the state gives you $5,000, you owe nothing in taxes. So Tesla owners get $5,000 from the state. They get anything else from the feds?
Well, the current law is that everybody can get a $5,000 tax credit at minimum. It streamlined some old laws that were very archaic, basically made it a handout so that dealers could take it off at point of sale, in fact. So it was immediate, cut off the top. As for your other question, it is on top of a federal tax credit of up to $7,500. So take those two together and you have $12,500 that could be offered to you basically at the point of sale.
All right, just for a point of reference, when I was in college, I saved $500 of beer money, and I bought myself a really sexy Datsun 210 for $500. Now the ladies like this. Faded red paint, cracked windshield, went 0 to 50 in under 15 minutes. And being a good Republican, I drove it for 8 years and sold it for $950. So that $12,000 plus, I could have mobility for several lifetimes just with that amount of money if I bought.
It's a lot of Datsuns you could buy.
All right. Now you love electric cars. I mean, you got friends who drive.
To drive my first golf cart.
You got your first golf cart. What is it about electric cars that are fun?
They are incredibly efficient vehicles, and they are very fast. They have a lot of performance.
What do you mean efficient vehicles? We're chopping down trees and burning coal to charge these things. How are they efficient?
Well, if you look at them as for miles per gallon, they have like miles per gallon equivalents. Yeah, they get about 99 miles per gallon depending on the model you choose. I think the Teslas that you've been referring to are closer to 80 miles per gallon. But there's a lot less in the drivetrains for that type of vehicle, where with a gas vehicle you have transmissions and a lot of different fluids that have to be changed out. So that it's a little bit more of an efficient driving machine.
Let me try it a little differently. You're a techno geek. All right? You are a goob. All right.
I'm an early adopter too.
You're an early adopter. That's a nice way for saying geek. Make yourself feel proud. That's good. But you love new technology, and there is something cool about electric cars in that it is a completely different mechanism. I grew up. You work on the alternator. You work on the transmission. You work on all this stuff, and none of it's there. It's a frickin' battery and an engine. Not a motor, and that motor works. So it's cool.
Yeah, and again, because there's so little moving parts, it ends up being an easy car to maintain if you don't want to do anything with it. But it's also very quick, and I've always enjoyed cars with nice performance, and they have low centers of gravity because the battery is at the very bottom of the car. But
let me tell you about a Datsun 210. If you're looking for performance, by not having those extra doors, it makes all the difference. All right, let's talk a little bit about who we're giving this money to. This is an important thing. Who gets this massive free money to buy Teslas?
Well, we have a couple examples. The state of Colorado projected a couple years ago that the typical EV, electric vehicle, early adopter would be someone who's making in excess of $100,000, affluent urban resident, and someone that's looking at their second or third vehicle.
Right, now, how do you know this? I mean, are you just taking a guess?
No, this is their projection based on the consumer, marketing reports. The Colorado Energy Office
really
did this a couple years ago. But we have real-world evidence from California. California has many more electric vehicle owners than the state of Colorado does, and that same pattern emerges. We're talking about very high earners. 94% actually of the money in California that went to the tax credits did not go to economically disadvantaged areas. And what that means is it went to wealthy owners, both in a self-reported study and in a study done by the state of California itself. So it wasn't just self-reporting. These folks are earning well in excess of $100,000. And they've actually, California, and to acknowledge that fact, has actually instituted 2 income caps, first at $250,000 and then down to $150,000 last year to try to address some of that inequality.
I see, this is what's so beautiful about not having any money for roads this year, is that guys like Quentin Tarantino, who has a net worth of $100 million, we gave $3 million to make a slasher movie. We're giving money to one of the Kennedy kids and Robert Redford now and Subsidies. It's cronyism. It's feel-good cronyism. So instead of it going to Exxon, it goes to Tesla and rich guys to buy their second or third car while there are people waiting on the side of the street for a bus to come and liberate them.
Anytime, anyone that's driven around Colorado, whether you've been here for 30 years or you're just starting to the state, you feel the need for road improvements, for bridge repairs and that sort of thing. And a lot of folks are saying, well, this is a couple $1 million for movie credits, or several $1 million for electric vehicle tax credits. Eventually, all those few $1 million adds up to quite a substantial sum. And if we're talking about finding efficiencies to fund a $9 billion backlog that the Colorado Department of Transportation says we have in infrastructure necessity, we need to get there somehow.
Stop giving rich guys money to buy toys and fix our roads. I want to ask you, because you had a... Go ahead.
Well, but that argument that the tax credit helps the little guys to afford the cars, even if it's not Teslas, the little guys aren't being helped out. The manufacturers are jacking up the price of that car, so it's not
How do you
going
know
to.
that?
So in 2012, when the Nissan Leaf came out, I think that was its first solid year in production. I purchased one, and
And the Leaf, just for people to know, is a all battery car. It's not like a
all
Prius.
battery. Yeah,
that's a hybrid.
Yeah, once you run out of battery,
you're dead.
You're dead. Yeah, you're dead in the water. But you have to basically watch your dashboard and make sure that you have enough miles to get to where you need to go. But the problem with that vehicle was when I purchased it, I was told all that new technology that was worth the purchase price of the car, which I think it was $38,000 when I bought it, and it was a 2-door hatchback. It was a very small car,
tiny Leaf
with a very big price tag. And I was told, oh, don't worry about it. You got that tax credit. That's going to help out, and that'll bring that value down to a $28,000 car. Unfortunately, I had to move. I didn't know at the time when I bought the car, but I moved about 55 miles from where I lived at the time, just outside of that car's range, and I had to sell it. And that's when I realized just how that tax credit really hurt me. I lost, and I know when you buy a new car, you lose 19% or so. I had to sell that car for $23,000 to a friend of mine because the trade-in value was even lower. I'd lost 38% of the value of that car in less than a year.
And why did you lose that much? One, because it's the most emasculating car in the world to drive, but other than that...
I lost that much because that was the market value of the car at the time I went to sell it. So I bought it in 2012, early in 2012. I sold it probably, I want to say it was around January 2013, so it was a little less than a year. And I'd already lost $38,000. But the worst part of that story is I sold to a friend of mine, and Nissan said, oh, we need to move more of these. They dropped the price of the car by about $7,000, and the range went up, the features went up, and my buddy who bought the car at $23,000, well, now new ones were now in the high 20s, still got the tax credit.
Which brought it right back down to that price.
He lost or his car was worth $16,000 like the next day, and I think he lost another 28% in the value of his car. And the market price is distorted. The value of the car is distorted by the tax credit.
That's really what gets to it, is that when you're making people rich because of being a crony, here's something for you and something for you, you lose the markers of what something really is worth. And so, did you ever drive it and run out?
I didn't run out, but I had to drive it strategically. I remember once it was a very cold day. A lot of people don't know, but electric cars are always saying, they're always giving you the absolute best conditions. You have no headwinds, it's a perfect temperature, you're not running any of the systems.
You're going downhill.
You're going downhill.
You're not carrying fat people.
There's a semi pushing you down the interstate. Right. But you go on the interstate, you're going to get probably about 75% of those quoted numbers for the amount of miles per charge you'll get. But once you start turning on things like heat, now you can take 20% off that number. So unless you're really good at math and you're driving down the freeway going, if I take 20%, I might make it home. You're playing a little bit of a game. And I remember once in the winter, I was driving to my new location. I'm like, I'm not going to make it home tonight. And I had to get, I had like a little electric blanket, like for an emergency, as they always recommend you have like blankets. I had a little electric blanket I would plug into the cigarette lighter.
Instead of turning on the heat.
Instead of turning on the heat. I couldn't afford the power to turn on the heat. So I had to use my electric blanket in my cigarette lighter to pull off another battery system in the car just to take the chill off. So I was sitting there freezing in my $38,000 electric
But it's
car.
computerized, so it felt good.
Yeah, at the time, the technology seemed really cool, but I was cold.
My Datsun always turned over. I could just pull over to any gas station, fill her up, and get going.
And arguably, it might have been a sexier car, too.
Yeah, I think so. By the way, cars should be named after violent, man-eating animals. And that's why you have cougars and jaguars and not Leafs. What the hell's a Prius, a Leaf? All right, there's some answers here. And that address this inequity, address this cronyism, corporate welfare, but also potentially help the roads. What's going on in the Capitol?
Well, we have a bill that's up to eliminate repeal and repair. So basically repeal the tax credit, basically mimicking what they did in Georgia, where Georgia said, let's allow the free market to operate. They eliminated their $5,000 tax credit, and electric vehicle sales plummeted 90% in 2 months. So if the folks that are selling these vehicles want to actually see what, and consumers too want to see what the actual price of an electric vehicle is, the free market should decide that. And those efficiencies that they gain will drop the price naturally.
By the way, I think over time these cars will become less expensive, have longer ranges, and be more accepted. There's going to be a lot more of these.
Right now, though, what we're seeing is a second or third car being added. You keep your 4Runner and your Jeep for going to the mountains, but this is a nice get around town. We're not replacing internal combustion engines, so we're not getting that benefit. But the bill is to repeal that, to send that money every year.
$5,000.
That $5,000 that turns into millions of dollars to the roads, the Highway User Trust Fund, and to ask the voters to do that. So the repeal first, and then repair our roads with that money.
So in other words, if the legislature passes this bill, voters might get the option to go, you know what, I'd rather that money go to fix my roads than for Quentin Tarantino to buy a Tesla.
Absolutely.
I love that. All right, thank you. If you want to get some of that information, go to independenceinstitute.org. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Read me in the Denver Post. Tell a friend. We'll see you next week.